Dave Hill here. Thank you for tuning into the lessons. I hope you've been learning a lot and you've been studying hard and you've been working on the homework I gave you from the last lesson. Welcome to lesson 31 in my rhythm guitar Bible. By now you've probably told a lot of your friends about this and you guys are all learning and enjoying about the guitar together. Remember, these courses go together, so you might want to explore not only the rhythm guitar classes and the videos, but go to the single string contents and look at those, because we have a lot of other material strictly devoted to the subject of lead playing and playing single notes. So this format is all about rhythm guitar and chords, of course, and you know that because you've been tuning in. But go ahead and look at the other classes and you'll enjoy those as well. So let's talk about what we're going to do in this lesson. What we have to cover is to wrap up one of the other chord forms that we haven't explored that much, and we're going to make sure that we cover that in this lesson, and that is the dominant seventh chord form. So we've covered major sevenths on our last lesson, and we covered 5 positions of major sevenths, and we also covered 5 positions of minor sevenths by now, but we haven't covered the dominant seventh chord. Okay, so what is a dominant seventh chord? Remember, a dominant seventh chord is the chord that's harmonized from the 5th degree of the major scale. So, for example, in the key of C, you have a C major 7 on the 1 chord. You have a D minor 7 on the 2 chord, E minor 7 on the 3 chord, another minor 7, and then you have a major 7th chord again on the 4 chord. But the chord we haven't covered much is the dominant chord that occurs on the 5th mode, or the 5th degree of the harmonized scale, and that's a dominant 7. Okay, now we have played some dominant 7th chords up till now. We've played them in open position chords like this. Many might have played some blues chords where we played even some dominant 9th chords. We learned about that, but we haven't covered the movable shapes of dominant chords yet, so I want to make sure that we go over those. Okay, so what I've done here is I've written out the 5 positions of major 7th, and we're going to use these as our reference. Okay, so let's just make sure that we can get to this. The first thing I'm going to need an eraser. Okay, so let's review these just to make sure that you're up to speed on all this, and then we're going to modify these and make these dominant chords. So our first form right here of major 7th, right, there's a very useful chord. We have our root in the 6th string. Okay, let's say we were going to play these all in the key of G just to review. Okay, and then we're going to get into the dominant chord. So that's the first position of major 7th. Okay, what would be the next position? Looking at my forms right here, what would be the next chord that would be a position up that we could play for major 7th? Ask yourself the question, well, all you have to do is look at the next position of G roots to answer that question. Well, if you look in the next position up, we've got a G root there and a G root right there. And if you look at the forms that we have, you could probably look at this and understand which root you're going to play. The root is on the 4th string and on the 2nd string. And if you look at these forms right here, you'll realize the only root location that would fit in this shape is that one right there. There's the root of the 4th string. So that means that this would be the next position of G major 7th that you would play. If you play this one first, the next position of G major 7th that would be available would be this one right here. Okay, fair enough, right? So let's go to the next root location above this and find our next chord on this chart. Okay, so there was the roots there. So if we go up a position and put our roots on the fingerboard, we'll see that we have these 2 roots here, and look at the positions that we have here. What do we have available? Well, here's a root here. That's exactly what I have right here, so that's the best fit with what I have left, right? I have a root in that same string right here, but that's a different position. The notes are above my finger. Remember, I want the notes below my 4th finger. So this has to be the shape. And there it is, G major 7th. So it's this one first, the next position here, next position, okay, all major 7th. Okay, now keeping this root here, but then finding the rest of the chord brings us to the best shape, which is right here. Because once again, the other root would have been right there if we'd played it, but that's the major 7th that we need to make it a major 7th, so that's what we played. Or the full bar across is right here. Okay, so there's major 7th. So this one right here, next one here, next one here, next one here. And then I think by a process of elimination, you know the next one. It's going to be roots right here, roots on the 3rd string, the major 7th on the top makes us find this chord. So there's our 5 positions of G major 7. Okay. Now I'm going over all of this because I know it's also good to review and it's good to summarize what we've been working on, but it's also good to tie this into what we're going to continue to study, and that is dominant chords. Now remember, a dominant 7 chord is root, major 3rd, perfect 5th, and flat 7. That's a dominant chord. Root, major 3rd, perfect 5th, flat 7. Okay? So, what that means is now every one of these major 7th chords that we have to find the 7th of the scale, or the 7th of the chord, and turn it into a flat 7 to make it a dominant 7th chord. Okay? So, that's all we have to do is literally find the 7th of the scale and see which note of our chord is the 7th, and then make that not a major 7th, but a flat 7. That means go down a half step to the flat 7. Okay? So, in this first form, that's what we're dealing with here. We've got a major 7th, and there's the 7th of the chord. So we make that a dominant 7th simply. Right? So that means we now have this chord. So that's our first dominant chord. Okay, now there's other ways we could play it. We could also play it like this. We could put a 5th right here as well, and that would be okay too. Doesn't change the fact that the 7th is still in it. Just another optional fingering. Okay, I know I've played this chord before, and we've touched on it, but I just wanted to officially talk about it today. Okay, the next shape that we played was right here, right? For major 7. Once again, we have to find the major 7th. And you might already have figured out that in the key of G, that would be an F sharp if it was the major 7, and it would be an F natural if it's the dominant 7. So if you look at your form here, all you have to do is look for the F sharp and make it F natural. There's the F sharp, make it F natural. There's our dominant 7th chord, and you can hear it's a different inversion of this chord right here. No problem. We now have dominant 7 like that. Right, so dominant 7, okay. Moving on up the neck, we have a major 7th that we used here. Okay, and there was the major 7th in the chord on the top of the scale. Okay, so you would probably go, well, then if it's the dominant 7, it's going to be like that, right? That's a good guess, but it's a little bit difficult to play that with that kind of a stretch. Okay, so here's what I'm going to suggest. I'm going to suggest taking the root, putting it back on the top here, right? And then, instead of using the 5th right here, we're going to, that's what this is, root 3rd, 5th. We're going to make the flat 7 right here. We're going to get rid of that note. So now we have root, 3rd, flat 7, root. And that gives us this shape. Right? So the fifth doesn't have to be in the chord. It's, in this case, we had to sacrifice the fifth so that we could get the dominant seventh in there. Right? So in terms of the most important notes of a chord, the third and the seventh are number one important. The fifth is optional. We have to make a sacrifice. Okay? So that is now dominant seven. Okay, moving up the neck, we had our major seventh form right here. Okay? Became a major the major triad became a major seven. Okay, because that note became the seventh, or is the seventh. But we know it's going to be F sharp is going to go to F natural if it's going to be a dominant chord. So what do we have to do? No problem. We just borrow what we have, and the flat seven is picked up underneath our bar. So that's dominant seven now. That was pretty easy. We just lifted up our finger. There's our dominant seven. So once again, dominant seventh here, dominant seventh here, dominant seventh here, dominant seventh here. Okay? Looking good, right? You guys are catching on with all this. And then finally, the last position we have of major seventh was right here. And we already know the major seventh of G is F sharp. And it's on the top of our voicing right here. So if we're going to make it a dominant chord, all we have to do is bring it down a half step, and now we have the dominant seventh on top. And what we have here is the major triad with the flat seven on top. So that now becomes a dominant seventh shape. Now we're good to go with 5 positions of dominant seven. And that's very important because the dominant seven chord is the chord that really brings in the resolution to harmony. When you have, what I mean is it's the functioning chord that makes it go back to the one sound, the diatonic feeling of the beginning of the progression. This is the 5 chord going back to 1. So that's a very strong cadence in music. 5, 1. Okay? So it's really good to have a variety of different dominant chords because that sound is so strong in music. Right? You can hear that all over the neck. Okay, there's that progression realized in a bunch of different positions. Okay.